Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan McNeil, and thank you very much for tuning in. On today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the difference between architects, engineers, and builders. Three key players in the construction world, three people that could be involved in working together in the construction of any building. But in my case, we're going to be talking about housing construction. So we're going to talk about the relationship between builders, engineers, and architects when it comes to single-family new home construction. I have new contact lenses and I'm sort of breaking them in here. And if the other thing I have going on here today is I have these new lenses that I'm going to be wearing, and hopefully they do the trick. And hopefully also these contact lenses that I'm wearing actually allow me to see what I'm doing. Okay, so there we go. Lenses on. Last week, I did an episode where I, in real time, shared my screen as I designed a small home plan and I drew the floor plan, shared the screen with the audience. I think it went pretty well. Got some good comments. Had a number of people actually even reach out. I had one person contact our office and ask the question I knew was coming, which is, so how much does it cost to build that little 600 square foot home? And I think I probably will do an episode in the future. Maybe it might take me a couple of weeks to get around to it, but perhaps we'll put together the pricing for that little building. And the problem with pricing, of course, is that if I produce a YouTube episode today and I include the pricing of what it costs to build a specific home, somebody watches that video in 6 months, 12 months, 5 years from now, of course, it's wildly out of date. But for the time being, I think it might be a useful exercise to sort of illustrate to people what it would actually cost to build a small backyard suite, in-law suite, little house like that. And that particular plan is something that I could definitely see people inquiring about, specifically wanting to build that very plan. So we probably will work through that. One other thing that came from that episode, a couple of comments that I received were from, I'm going to assume they were architects or architectural students, perhaps. And they made comments to the effect that, yeah, but he's not an architect. They're referring to me, right? I'm not an architect. And they're absolutely right. I think I actually stated that when I started the episode. I am not an architect. Architects have a specific designation. Okay, in order to be an architect, you have to be educated and go through a certain process. No different than being an engineer or a certified management accountant or any of those professional designations. I'm not producing this episode solely to address that comment of I'm not an architect, but I want to explain to folks the relationship between myself as a home builder and the architect and the engineers. Three professionals involved in constructing buildings, and in my case, constructing custom homes. The architect is a person who has a stamp. They went to school. They learned how to design functional buildings. They think of things in terms of space and symmetry and aesthetics. They know design theory. They know building code, hopefully. They understand zoning, hopefully. They're good with a vision. That's what the architect essentially is. They are the designer. They are the person who designs and draws the plan. They are the visionary. But the truth is that they usually have no idea how much anything actually costs to build. And most of them have never managed a job site at any level. Their role starts and ends before construction begins. They don't ever go to the job site. The engineer, on the other hand, is kind of think of them as like your structural brain, right? They calculate whether, the beam is large enough or you need a beam, and they're calculating the size of a column pad, and they're dealing with point loads and snow loads on the roof. The other thing they may do is engineer the concrete foundation. Oftentimes we will put it in a concrete slab, but it's an engineered concrete slab. And so the engineer has to take my floor plan design and then design a foundation, an engineered foundation, design all the steel and rebar and everything that has to go in there for that foundation to support the building that we're building on it. These are the folks that are basically involved in ensuring that everything is built in such a way that it's not going to fall down. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Anything that falls outside of the building code, and you need somebody with a smart brain and can do the math, literally, and tell you what it is that you need to do to build this thing or accomplish this part of what you're building to make sure that it is structurally sound. What the engineers do is very important. And when we need to engage an engineer, it's not something that you can do without an engineer. You can't just wing it. You need an engineer's stamp on the drawing and documentation that you are going to present to the municipality to obtain your building permit. So there's no workaround there when it comes to the need for engineers. Not in my world as a custom home builder. But The engineers are not designing your kitchen or your layout or telling you how to arrange your mud room or design your roof line for you. That's not what they're doing. And then you come to the third person in the mix, and that is the home builder, and that's me. And this is the person who actually is responsible for taking the design and building it, turning that drawing into a house. This is the person who manages the trades, orders materials, manages the timelines, deals with everything on the site. This is the person who executes the plan. That's the builder. And in my world, for me specifically, I am also the person who designs and draws the floor plans and home plans for the home that we're going to build. Okay, so I am the builder and the designer in my world. Now, let's focus on the architects here for a minute. Okay, architects are professionals. They go to school, post-secondary education, a lot of school. And in my research, from what I understand from it, it's upwards of 6 to 8 years, maybe even more, depending on the complexity that you're getting involved with. And then there is internship that has to be, work hours and internship that has to be done in order for you to log enough hours and get enough experience. And then there are exams to be written. And then after you've completed your education, put in your time, wrote the exams, you become certified and you're an architect. And when you're certified as an architect, then you can legally use the term architect to refer to yourself. And architects are required for certain types of buildings, like large commercial buildings, institutional buildings, and multifamily buildings in most cases, or in many cases, depending on the municipality, depending on the building code application requirements and so on. To become an architect, it is a very specific path, and it involves a great deal of education. And they are highly educated. And hopefully by the time they have the title of architect, they are also experienced with drawing and designing architecture. The primary focus of an architect is conceptual design. Many of them work in urban design. They focus on aesthetics. They produce the construction documentation that is needed for the builders and in many cases engineers to refer to. They work with consultants and engineers, as I mentioned. But one thing to note is that they are far less involved with actual construction, certainly than the home builder. I mean, the builder is all of the construction. Engineers have some involvement in construction when it pertains to them. Architects usually have nothing to do with the construction of the home or of the building. Now, again, before anyone loses their mind, they say, hey, I'm an architect and I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm always on the site doing things. Yeah, that's great. But I'm referring to residential home construction. You will never see an architect on site. Like ever. The other thing to note when it comes to architects is that they normally have limited real world building experience. They know how to design, they know how to handle their side of things, but in many cases they have little to no real world building experience. They are detached from things like budgets, the realities of how much things cost or who even does it, who you even contact to get certain things done. And in many cases, architectural designs and architects in general prioritize form and aesthetics over function. And I've seen that firsthand many, many times. I've seen very beautifully designed, very cool buildings. Like I've had folks come into me with these architectural plans that they've either purchased or had drawn. They pull them out in front of me. I look at the plan like, wow, that's a great looking home plan, right? That's a really great looking building. And then we start looking through the floor plans, and it becomes less and less attractive to me as a home builder because we start going through the things that are either not functional from a living perspective or things that are going to be wildly expensive to build and or in some cases impossible to build. I've had plans presented to me in the past drawn by architects that are, for lack of a better term, impossible to build. I mean, I've seen some completely whack things, really nice looking on the outside, very dysfunctional on the inside. Now, I don't say that to discredit architects in any way. I have a great deal of respect for architects, especially when you see buildings that were designed by an architect or an architectural firm, and you look at it and it has elements that perhaps you've never even seen before, you didn't even think of, and it's just very pleasing to the eye. I may see a building downtown Halifax, for instance, or in any other city, or even just a photo online somewhere. And you see a photo and you think, wow, that's really cool architecture. That's just very different, very cool. And then my next immediate thought is, how did they possibly build that? Like, who built that thing? How did they come up with that? In a scenario like that, where you have this very unique building, very different building, there's going to be a very close working relationship between the architects and the engineers and the builder, whoever it is that builds this thing. And these things aren't built by, one guy in a pickup truck. These buildings are built by enormous, usually commercial construction firms. They often have their own staff on site, project managers, engineers, architects, you name it, with experience working on these types of buildings. I don't come from a construction background. I didn't have any family members that were in the construction world. I graduated with a business degree from St. Mary's University, and my major was computing and information systems. I also did 2 years in Arizona at a golf school where I was pursuing a career as a golf professional. So none of that has anything to do with home building. But when I was in university, at no point did the thought of being a home builder or being in the real estate business or a real estate developer ever cross my mind. Like, it was nowhere near what I was thinking, right? I was thinking about going into the tech business or, the information technology business. Keep in mind, this is back in like late 90s into the early 2000s. So you're talking about the .com boom and all these things going on. Like, it was a different time back then. And I've said many times before, if I were to go back to university knowing what I know now, I would study one of two things. I would either do a business degree again and focus on accounting, if for no other reason, simply because it would be very useful as a business owner. Or I would go back and pursue a degree in architecture and become an architect, and then also do what I do. But the architectural background would be, of course, a benefit to what I do. The theoretical knowledge and the technicalities of it, it's stuff that I would like to know, but I don't need to know. But again, if I were to go back in time, all things being equal, it's probably something that I would have pursued educationally. I have the utmost respect for architects and engineers. These are professionals, highly trained, very smart people. And I respect what they do, and we're all intertwined and work together. So I want people to know I'm not diminishing the value of architects by any means. But as you'll see, as I go through this, you'll realize that I don't use architects, but it's not because I don't like architects. It's because I don't have any use for what they do, because I do it. Now let's look at how design and build custom home builders compare to architects. So myself, as a design and build custom home builder, I have no formal degree in architectural design. This is experience-based knowledge of construction and design. That's what I'm working with. I can create plans and build them. That's the difference. Now, especially when we're talking about single-family construction. Now, I have designed buildings that are not single-family. I have designed and drawn some low-rise multifamily buildings, townhomes, duplexes, etc. But the difference between me and an architect is that I design and draw the plans and then build the building. Okay? Much different than drawing the plans, designing the building, and handing those plans to somebody else and saying, good luck. Although I'm not an architect, I can still design and build homes within my municipality here within this province, especially low-rise and single-family construction. Now, I may need an engineer's stamp for certain things if it perhaps falls outside of the building code or the municipality is looking for more information on something. I may need to engage an engineer and get a stamp for a particular section or part of the house that we're building. And depending on the complexity of the building, and certainly if we were building like a commercial or institutional building or a large multifamily building, then of course I may need to engage an architect. The other difference between design and build home builder versus the architect is that for me, it is real world function, flow, and cost efficiency that I am concerned with. I'm not just trying to design a plan that looks really cool. I'm not trying to design a building that's going to win me an awards based on design. I'm not looking to design a building that checks all the boxes that the client has given me, but doesn't give any consideration to what it's going to cost to do these things. Functionality and cost to build are always at the very top of the criteria and the things being considered for every home plan that I design. That comes from 20 years of experience and a deep understanding of site conditions and material costs and labor costs. And so in the process of doing that, the designs are done with buildability and budget in mind. And the typical strengths of a design and build home builder is that the design is going to be faster. It's going to be a more efficient design to build process. There's going to be a stronger alignment between plan and construction reality. And there is far more accountability because the home builder designed the plan and the home builder is going to build the plan. And so if there's a problem, you're going to go back to the home builder and said, well, you designed it. And then the other thing is that clients get exactly what they paid for, and they're working with the builder as they go through the design process, and they're asking questions about, but how much might this cost versus that? What are your recommendations here versus there? In the 20 years that I have been building, I have absolutely engaged the professional services of architects on more than one occasion. On several occasions, I have hired architectural firms to design apartment buildings, multifamily buildings that I was planning to build or am in the process of building. When I engaged those architectural firms, there was never at any point a thought in my brain where I thought I would do that myself, because I realized the limitations of my architectural design abilities. I also realized that I don't have any experience designing multi-story, multifamily buildings. Now, as a home builder, it's a little different. I can often tell sometimes the architects are not always used to talking with the builder at the design stage. And so very early on, as the architects send me things, I very quickly respond with, I don't want to do it that way. That's going to cost a fortune. I recently had a 50-unit apartment building designed for an apartment building that is to be built on a parcel of land that I own here in the city. Very involved process to go through a development agreement to have the building designed and approved. And the building is all approved now. And the architects were the ones who were responsible to take the site that as I provided to them, the survey file. So they take the measurements and they work with the setbacks that are required, how far the building has to be from the street, from the side, from the back property line. They're thinking about things like grades and underground parking. They did a great job. We designed a fantastic looking building. We'll put an image of the building up here as I talk about this. When the architects first came back to me with sort of the first draft, everything looked pretty good, other than I was not a big fan of the flat roof. That was essentially the only thing that I mentioned. I said, everything looks great. Love the layout. Love the general orientation with the street. I think everything will work fine with the grades, what you're suggesting. Not a big flat roof fan. So let's put a pitched roof on this building. And all of the architects were like, oh my God, not a pitched roof. We don't do pitched roofs. These buildings all have flat roofs. Multifamily buildings all have flat roofs. That's just how we do it. That's just how it is. It's more commercial application, and that's just what we're used to doing. And I went, yeah, but I'm the one building this thing, and I don't want to build a flat roof. I want to build a pitched roof for two reasons. One, I don't like flat roofs. They're prone to leaking in my experience. I'm unfamiliar with them, and I have to go find some tradespeople to finish that roof who I'm not familiar with. And I don't like working with people I'm not familiar with because I want to ensure quality control and I want to make sure it's done correctly. And the other second reason that I wanted to do it, setting all that aside, is that I wanted a pitched roof on this building because I think it looks more attractive. There was initially pushback from the architects. They didn't want to put a pitched roof on the building, and then we put it on. When they sent the pitched roof version back to me, even they said, you know what? This actually looks pretty good. The feedback from the general public, from other architects, from tradespeople that I've sent the plans to, and from the city councilors who were involved in approving it, the number one thing everybody commented on was how awesome the building looked and how it will definitely be one of the nicest looking buildings, if not the nicest looking building in that area. And everybody loved the pitch roof. It's something that they commented on. Even layman people have no idea about construction. They looked at this plan and they went, wow, the roof is really cool on that thing. I like how you put a pitched roof on it. I'm like, yeah, I know, man. That's what I do. I'm a visionary. I design things that look good and are functional to build. And so that's what we ended up with. A fantastic looking 5-story building with a pitched roof. This building's awesome looking. I had nothing to do with the design of the building. The front of the building has a little commercial space. And up top, we have this covered balcony, kind of this common balcony area for the tenants. I mean, the building looks awesome. The architects came up with all that on their own. And as I said earlier, they incorporated some things in this design that I would not have thought of on my own because I don't have the same experience that they have. They've worked with these multifamily buildings in multiple stories and common areas and so on. My head just doesn't go there because I haven't done it before. So they did some things with this building that when I looked at it, I go, wow, this is really nice. This is an awesome looking building. And I wouldn't have come up with this on my own. But now I have new things in my database. Now I have new thoughts in my head. So if I were coming up with a building in the future, I might incorporate some of these things because you learn new things and then you incorporate them as you go. So all that is to say, I use architects when architects are needed. But in the 20 years that I have been a home builder, and in the hundreds of custom homes designed specifically for the clients, I have never, ever engaged the services of an architect to design any of the homes that I have built. Now, you may think to yourself, I find that kind of hard to believe that in 20 years and hundreds of homes that you've never built a home that was designed by an architect. And so I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that I've never built a home that was, for the most part, designed by an architect. But what happens in those cases is folks come to me with a plan drawn by an architect, and then I take that plan and redraw it and capture any and all of the changes that they wanted to make that they couldn't make, because a lot of architects, they have a certain fee. They charge X number of dollars, they draw the plan, and maybe you get 2 revisions or 3 revisions, and then maybe it costs more money for more revisions after that. I don't work that way. We design a home for a customer. We make as many revisions as is necessary to get that home plan designed to be exactly what it is that these folks want, and or to meet their budget. We keep going back and forth until we nail it down. Architects don't function that way. Also, architects don't sit in the room with you like I do, face to face, and talk through the plans and answer all of your questions in real time about things like how much would this cost versus that? Can we do this? Can we do that? Those types of questions are builder questions, and no architect is going to answer that for you. And so I have had folks bring architectural designs, and then we have redrawn those plans and then built them. I don't take credit for that design, but what I'm saying is, as a home builder, in my 20 years and hundreds of homes, I've never at any point contacted an architect and had them design and draw the plans for a home that I've built. And I realize that may come as a surprise to many people, but the thing is, I design the homes. I've been doing it for 20 years. I know what works. I know what people want. I know what trades can realistically build. I know what it'll cost. So there's really no need for me to pay someone else to draw me a house plan that I am going to then redesign anyway. I work directly with clients to design homes that are both beautiful but buildable. That's what a design build means. I'm not just the guy who manages the tradespeople and calls the trades and organizes the deliveries and supplies and so on. I'm the guy who sat down with the client, designed their dream home for them, and then made it happen. You know, I could use a bit of analogy here. This is kind of how I think about it. If you were hiring somebody to build you a race car, and the goal with this race car was not just for you to drive it, the goal was you want to win, right? It's no good to just pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a race car and then not win the race. You want to win. And in our world, the analogy winning is completing a successful build. You move into that home, it was on budget, it was on time, it's what you wanted to build, you won. You won the race. And so if you were going to hire somebody in this analogy, if you're going to hire somebody to build that race car, do you want to hire somebody who has a degree and has designed race cars for a living, and they work inside and they have wind tunnels and they have all those things to analyze their design? Or would you want to hire somebody who not only designs race cars, but drives race cars, and not only drives the race cars, but has won hundreds and hundreds of races? And they have won those hundreds and hundreds of races in cars that they have designed without the help of designers or architects. For me, I'm hiring the race car driver, especially since I'm also hiring that same race car driver to then drive the car that he designed to win the race for me. That's the analogy. That's how I look at it. When it comes to engineers, mind you, totally different story. We work with engineers on a pretty regular basis. Not necessarily every home that we build, but any of the homes that we build that have, some very specific features, or if we run into issues. Engineers help us fix issues that we run into. Like, we excavate for the foundation and we discover we've got a soft bottom and it's not conducive for footings, right? We excavate, we realize we don't have natural soil conditions that are going to be suitable for putting footings on. So we have to engage an engineer, and we've got to build a rock pad. We have to have the engineer tell us exactly how thick to make it and what product to use. And we get that built, and the engineer comes by and they take a look and they go, yeah, it looks good. They give us a stamp, and we send that to the municipality and they say, go ahead and put your footings. Okay, everybody's happy. In most cases, for the homes that we build, we don't need to engage an engineer. It does happen. It's a relatively simple process for us because we have engineers that we go to for certain things. You just give them a call, you send them an email, you give them the details as to what it is that you're dealing with, and they come up with a solution. They're problem solvers. That's what they do. They do the math. Early on, one of the first things I ask folks when we're designing a home for them is, what is your budget? I know how much it costs to build a home. So I need to know how much you want to spend on a home because I have to design a home that's going to meet your budget. Anybody can design fantastic looking buildings if you have absolutely no consideration whatsoever for how much things are going to cost. That is the other end of the spectrum for me. Before I start drawing a plan, I am already in my mind working within a limitation of a certain budget that I'm trying to keep this thing within. So if you're thinking about building a house and you're wondering if you need to hire an architect, here's my honest answer. If you're doing a one-off custom home and your builder is experienced with design, then skip the architect. Work with the builder. Have the builder or the builder's representative. They could have a staff member on site. They could even have an architect on site for that matter. But work with the builder or the builder's folks or staff to design your home. The builder is going to be far better equipped to design a home for you that they know they can build. That's important. If you're doing something more complicated, commercial, institutional, large multi-story, multi-family buildings, then yes, of course, you are going to be engaging the services of a professional architect or an architectural firm. You're not really going to have any choice whether you want to or not because you're going to require architectural drawings in order to get your building permit. What you really need is somebody who understands how to design a house that can be actually built within your budget. And I don't mean any of this as a sales pitch. I mean all of this as a reality check. People spend sometimes tens of thousands of dollars on architectural drawings that look great in a binder, but they never get built because no one checked to see what it would actually cost to build. There was never any conversation about what it would actually cost to build. It was just a conversation about how much it would cost to draw the home plans. What you really need to know is how much is it going to cost to build the house. Certainly for anybody who is planning to build a new home in this area where I build here in Nova Scotia, my advice to you, whether you build with us at Stonewater Homes or any other builder, is do not hire an architect to design your home plan until at least you have met with and determined which builder it is you want to build that house. Because what you're probably going to find in 99% of the cases is that you're not going to need an architect. The builder may collect and take your information and your criteria, put that in an email or conversation, send it to his or her architect that they work with, have the architect draw the plan, send it back. The builder bounces it back and forth a few times until they nail it down and get it where they want it. And then the builder sends it to you for feedback. You give some feedback. He or she then sends it again to his architect. They make the change, send it back to you, and so on. Okay, so the builder may very well be the middleman between you and the architect, or in some cases, the builder may even send you to have a conversation with his or her architect. The floor plans that I draw and then we turn into building plans, that is all we go by. I've had people in the past who have found that a bit, puzzling or surprising, I guess, that we take that set of building plans. It's one page, front elevation, left, right, rear elevation, and then a top-down 2D floor plan view of the main floor, the lower level, the basement, the second story, whatever it is. But that's it. One 2D drawing of each side of the house, a top-down 2D drawing of the floor plan. You hand that to me, we build it for you. Sometimes you may hire an architect and they may draw plans for you and they have all these pages. They may have dozens of pages of information. If somebody sends me a set of plans or shows up at my office, comes for a meeting, they pull out a set of architecturally designed plans and it has dozens of pages, I'm like, my eyes start to glaze over. You're losing me. I probably don't have much interest in building that home. In that case, you probably want me to build something that is very specific and probably highly unfamiliar to me, right? So the architect maybe has gone into really high level detail, even specifying things like the types of faucets and door handles and trim and all of those things, right? The pot lights you want to use, all of those things. We don't do that. This is another analogy that I can use as it pertains to the relationship between myself as a design and build home builder and the architects. You engage the services of a home builder, you're a team. You, that home builder's staff and tradespeople and everybody involved, you're working toward a win, right? And what's considered a win is a successful project. On time, on budget, what you asked for, everybody's happy. You could use that in a sports analogy. Let's use football. So we are all the team working toward the goal of winning and specifically scoring. And in this case, let's call it a touchdown for the win. Then in that scenario, the home builder is the quarterback. That is the person who is ultimately responsible for organizing and managing and directing everybody else on the field. You could think of the architect as somebody who works in the head office. They design plays that we can run on the field in hopes of executing this play to be successful and win. I work with the customer and all of the rest of the team, but specifically, I work with the customer, our client, to design a play, which in this case is the house, that is going to accomplish what it is they want, which is to score, to win. So we design the play and they go, you know what? I like that play. That play matches everything we need it to be. It involves the people we want to involve. It looks like what we want it to look like. Let's go with that play. And I go, great. I go out on the field and I huddle up with all my team. And I say, okay, everybody, here's the play. And then we take to the line of scrimmage. We execute the play. We score. We win. Everybody's happy, including the client. Now, the client is part of the team, but they're standing over on the side. They're not out on the field, right? The field is the construction site. They're standing on the sidelines, but they are part of the team. And so to tie this analogy back, when an architect says to a home builder, yeah, but you're not an architect. My response to the architect who says that is, yeah, okay, but think about the analogy I just gave you. I'm the quarterback of this team. Even if I use your design, I am 100% responsible to execute this play. And if you design a bad play and I execute it the way you designed it and it fails, I'm still going to be the one who takes the responsibility and who is accountable for that. You're not going to raise your hand and say, hey, everybody, my bad design. No, you're going to say, oh, well, the quarterback should have improvised. The quarterback should have recognized that that was wrong or there was a mistake or whatever it might be. When an architect says to me, yeah, but you're not an architect, what I say to them is, yeah, but you're not a builder. I've seen those comments before and I always find it really interesting. I have never, ever designed a play or designed a home and then executed that play or built that home and had it not be successful. Never, ever. 20 years, hundreds of homes, 100% success rate. What do I need an architect for? To anybody who's listening, who's thinking about building a home and you would like to have a consultation or a conversation about how that goes, by all means, please reach out. I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. To any architects who are listening, don't be mad at me. I'm not trying to be difficult here. I'm not trying to discredit you in any way. Architects are very smart, very necessary people, professionals, high level of skill. I have the utmost respect for them and I respect what they do. And I can't do what they do. I know a few of my architect buddies will see this and they'll probably have a good laugh about it, but they know I'm right. It's not meant to be argumentative. It's not meant to upset anybody. I'm just trying to paint a clear picture as to what the difference is between architects, engineers, and builders and how we all fit together. So thanks very much for listening and I'll see you next time.